Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
And welcome into Life Planning 101. Blegney Hodges here, sitting in for Terry Slavens. But I'm excited to be here with Angela Robinson, and she has a guest with her today that's going to be on air as well.
That's right. Special guest. And I'm really excited to have him on. Good morning, everyone, to Life Planning 101. My name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services here in the great state of Texas in the great town of Eastland. So, yes, but we do have a great topic, as always, this morning. We try to always hit what, is on everybody's minds. And I found a quote that I thought was very ideal for what we're going to be talking about today. And it was by Paul Valéry. And he said, "The trouble with our times is that the future is not what it used to be." The future's not what it used to be, and that's so true. We live in such a fast-growing environment with technology that you can barely keep up unless you're involved in it all the time. Mm-hmm. And with that comes a lot of fears and a lot of risks, and one of those is identity theft. And I think that's something that's been a hot topic, especially with recent events in the past year, on everybody's mind. And if you haven't been a victim yourself of identity theft, there's probably a good chance that one of your family members or friends has, definitely somebody you know. So what we've done is we actually asked a Texas bank here in Eastland, Texas, and I know they're in surrounding areas. They have made a valiant effort to do research and study and to be able to help their customers on what they need to know and what they need to do. And we have a very special guest this morning, Mr. Junior Pacheco, a loan officer here that has been involved in these studies and been able to also present to our clients this last month and talk to them on what they need to know about identity theft. So thank you, Junior. Good morning for being on the show.
Everyone.
Good morning.
Yes. Yeah. So tell us about this. I mean, obviously, I think everybody knows to some degree what identity theft is. But, when y'all look at it, what are you looking at? What do you call identity theft? And more importantly, another topic y'all have talked about is elder financial abuse, which is becoming a big deal.
Going back to that speech I did earlier in the month, it was just amazing what I found and the number of people affected by this. It was just outrageous, the number of people. And just what identity theft is just another person being able to use your personal information. And, some of that information includes your mother's maiden name, personal identification number, or your PIN number, account numbers, and access codes or passwords. Now, you're looking at that and anytime you open up an account or anything like that, these are your basic standard security questions. And that's what's alarming, that people are able to access these type of passwords and codes.
Right. And so when you're looking at this, I know you gave out some statistics on the show, and you may or may not have one of those in front of you. But, how many billions did you say was stolen over the last 6 years with identity theft? This blew my mind.
So according to a 2017 identity fraud study, which was released by Javelin Strategy and Research, they found that $16 billion was stolen from 15.4 million consumers in 2016.
And it's 2016 alone. Wow.
And before that, in 2015, $15.3 billion and 13.1 million victims. So as you can see, the numbers are climbing every year, and I'll be curious to see what they were for 2017.
Exactly. And I had my dad send this over before the show. He actually used this in our presentation over in Abilene, and I thought this was really good, to really get a grasp on what $1 billion is, because a lot of people don't understand, what $1 billion is.
I mean, you hear it and you're like, $1 billion.
Yeah, it's a lot, right?
It's a lot.
But you can comprehend a million, but you really can't comprehend $1 billion for most people. So $1 billion seconds ago was 1959.
God.
Okay.
Seconds.
$1 billion minutes ago was when Jesus was alive. Think about that. $1 billion hours ago was when our ancestors were in the Stone Age. And I love this. $1 billion ago was only 8 hours and 20 minutes at the rate Washington, D.C. spends it. So, very good. But, that kind of puts some reality to that's a lot of money that's going out by theft. So, who are the people that really need to be paying attention to this? Who are the people that are at risk?
Well, everybody sitting in this room and every U.S. consumer.
Everybody listening.
Yeah, everybody listening. There are 4 groups that this study has showed, which was put out by the Next Advisors blog. The top 4 groups include children and adults with caregivers, any social media user, business owners at the top levels like CEOs, just because of the value of that information and their accounts they have, college students, just for the simple fact that they're unaware of their finances at that age, 18, 19.
They don't monitor it.
Yeah, they don't monitor it.
They don't care.
And there's some that do, but for the majority,
for the most part, yeah.
So
wow, that's what I travel a lot to conferences and things, and I'm always talking to people. In this last conference, we got in a conversation, and there were several in the room that said, "I had my identity stolen right after I stayed at such and such hotel and such hotel." And I remember being in a seminar several years ago, and they said those are target victims because if you think about it, the people that go to hotels have what? Money, right?
Exactly.
So they have these lines of credits on their cards, and
you're on free Wi-Fi. I mean, that's a hacker's paradise.
That's exactly right. So I think that's a big thing. And then one of the things that really hit me hard was the things that you had said about who was really taking advantage of these people. And I think this is probably what blew my mind about your presentation more than anything.
Yeah, I was a little alarmed with that too. And I'll throw myself under the bus. There's bank employees are on that list as well. Some of those people are caretakers, for elderly people.
Not horrible.
Here's the worst part: family members, neighbors, friends, and acquaintances, attorneys, pastors, doctors, and nurses.
People that a lot of people have access to.
Yeah,
and they trust.
Yeah.
Trusted people. That's probably the hardest part of that whole deal. We could say story after story of things that we've heard, and usually the stories that we encounter are those of a client of ours that knew somebody or had a family member as a victim of this. And probably the worst one was a lady that was in Wisconsin, and her family's back here, and nobody could get a hold of her, and something was going wrong. Well, she didn't have a power of attorney that anybody knew about, so the court appointed her next door neighbor and virtually cleaned her out.
Oh man.
Financially. But this is what happens, and this is a real risk that's out there, and it's not even just people that you don't know about, but your family members. And we always talk about good Christmases and Thanksgivings after you're gone, and we see this a lot. There's one daughter that's taking care of mom, or is she? Right?
Yeah.
And then there's 2 more that are at a distance. Maybe they live in a different state or a different town, and there's a lot of risk to that. So what do you do with that? And I think that's a big thing. So we've got a lot more information on identity theft, and one of the things, of course, the reason we wanted to bring an expert on the show today is really to talk about what can you do, what can you set yourself up to have some of these protective measures against this abuse that's out there.
I love that music coming back. Gets me super pumped to talk about
way too much coffee every first thing in the morning, Blaney.
Welcome back into Life Planning 101 right here on KTX and KWBY. Angela Robinson, of course, along with us, and Junior Pacheco from Texas Bank.
That's right. Very happy to have and thank Texas Bank for coming on with us this morning and sharing this information with all of our listeners, because this is so important. Sadly, there is so much of this out there that's happening left and right, and I know you've got some great examples of what people are seeing as far as identity theft goes and elder financial abuse from a banker's point of view. You see a lot more of it than we do. So why don't you give us some enlightenment there on what you guys have seen?
These examples of identity theft, there's not a day that goes by that I don't see at least one a day, at least. And most of those are stolen checks, stolen ATM cards, a fraudulent change of address, someone calling in saying, hey, I moved. Change the address just to receive those statements and get that account number. Social Security misuse or Social Security numbers misuse, passport stolen, phone service, driver's license number misuse, or civil and criminal judgments filed. So
what do you mean by that?
Well, these Civil and criminal judgments, normally whenever we see those are on people's credit bureaus, these judgments are any outstanding accounts that are like,
okay.
if someone steals a credit card, they rack up $8,000. Of course, that gets charged off,
I see what you mean.
and then there's a judgment placed on someone's credit bureau using their social. So
yeah.
It's horrible.
So scandalous.
I know,
yeah.
and it goes so far. I mean, we've seen, in the past year, we've had a huge IRS identity fraud. We had the whole Equifax with their break-in. We've seen it everywhere. And, this is something that people really need to pay attention to. Denzel Washington has a perfect quote. He says, luck is when opportunity comes along and you're prepared for it, right? And oftentimes we may consider ourselves lucky or, oh, that won't happen to me. But in reality, and this is no joke, I actually heard a speaker one time, he said, your information's out there. It's out there. It's been stolen. If you've ever swiped your card, anywhere, at a gas station, anywhere, your information is out there. You're just lucky it hasn't been stolen. So what can you do? It's the bottom line. All right.
Let's get some positive coming up here.
Let's figure out what can you do to actually protect yourself or help yourself from, being a victim of this.
Yeah, and to kind of start off for social media users, I don't believe there's no one here in this room or in this town that hasn't logged into a computer or Instagram, Facebook, or anything like that. And one of the main things is just create strong passwords and update them frequently. And I use this example. At work I have to change my password every 30 days, and right about the time I've learned my password, it's time to
come up with
another one. So and that's the main thing, and I think what we advise people, if 30 days is too short of time, at least 60 to 90 days, change your password, write it down, put it in a secure location where you only know where it's at. And second is just be aware of what you share. If you log into a site using your social, using an address, using a PIN number, an account number, just be careful what you share. Also, your sensitive personal and financial documents. And this is just going back to your deeds of trust, your bank statements, anything that has your social, your name, and other personal identification. You use a safety deposit box, a safe at the house, or in a lockbox somewhere. Protect your mobile device. There's people out there stealing people's iPhones, jailbreaking them, breaking into their phones. Of course, there's most people write down their passwords in their little app of notes. So, and that's how those hackers are able to access that information. And second is check your credit report. And that's something that I stress to everyone. I personally do it, once a year through annualcreditreport.com, which is free. Once a year, look at it.
And you can get each of the 3 free, right? So
correct.
If you've been a target, a lot of times we say go every 4 months,
Exactly.
and then you can get a hold of each one of those at least and start monitoring.
And and to go back to the whole Equifax hacking, socials being used by other people, that put a scare in everybody. And I was a part of that. Luckily, my social or information wasn't used. However, I was given a identity theft protection program or software for free for 2 years. And I think the charge after that's $20 or $25 a month, but with that software, I'm able to see, when an account's open, how much it was for, who did it, and when it's paid off. And I get an email notification on that the day of. And that's very, very helpful.
Yeah, that is really good because, immediately something's going on,
Exactly.
That's so important. And, one of the things you mentioned up there about not giving any more information than you need to. So this is a little known fact, but a lot of companies will have you in their database and look up by your social security number. I mean, how many times have you called into place and said, give me the last 4 of your social, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to think of like your doctor's office. Don't give your social security number. They don't need your social security number. Okay. So because here's the deal. You may say, well, that's not a big deal. I mean, they're private information. Well, you're just putting it in one more place for the information to be hacked. I mean, at the end of the day, if Equifax can be hacked, do you think your doctor's office can be hacked?
Right. Yeah.
So, really think about, who you're giving what information to. And if you ever question why they're wanting that information, question them. Say, why do you need it? Tell me why you need it. If they don't need it, don't give it
There's
to
no
them.
sense in you having it. Yeah.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the last one here is don't fall for phishing scams, and that's mysterious phone calls, emails, and so
Yeah, and we actually had a poor little lady this year. She did that, and she knew exactly when she got done. She called our office, and she said, I think I just messed up. And we're like, oh my gosh. And sure enough, that's exactly what they called her. And, the IRS never calls you, by the way. That never happens.
Never.
Okay. They will not call you.
And to touch on that, on that Friday, I think it was like 2 or 3 p.m., right before we're getting ready to close. Our bank conducts just one of these phishing scams to see how many employees fall for it.
Wow.
And what it was, and it's just to keep everybody on their toes. And what it was a TurboTax email stating that there was a change to your tax return. You're going to receive it 2 weeks early on January 30th.
Nope.
And luckily, I saw it and I was like, yeah, well, my CPA does my taxes, so I just hit delete, and there was a mass email that went out to everybody stating that all employees had not opened that file. Everything was deleted. So, and that's some of the awareness that the bank has. For me and just every employee that we have, and every frontline employee that deals with these customers on a daily basis. So it was a good report. Nobody clicked on it or opened it up.
That's right. That's really good. That's awesome. Well, I think it's this prevention. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? And
that's right.
This is so important to just take a minute and do this. I mean, it's like everything else you do. It's just like, turning down the heater in your house, or unplugging something before you leave, unplugging the coffee pot before you leave town, right?
That's
this
right.
is the exact same thing. If you don't want your house to burn down, you got to do some maintenance. And this is exactly what you're talking about with your whole financial picture, because things could fall apart. I mean, just imagine that you do leave on vacation out of the country for 2 weeks. What can be done? What damage could be done in that period of time without knowing? Well, the same thing could be happening and you not even know it, just because you don't have any way to be able to monitor it. And that's the sad truth of it. You may not notice till you get your bank statement, and that's been 4 weeks in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I think we are so privileged to have Texas Bank here in town, and small banks, in particular, is that, you talked a lot about this with our clients. You guys get to know your customers really, really well.
Exactly. And that, they were alarmed that, we have a relationship with every customer. We know our customers' habits. And when I say habits, what day they come in during the week, what time they come in, how much they withdraw from their account. So, we're able to monitor that just by having those relationships with them. If just say Bob Smith comes in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. and withdraws $500, we're expecting that. And as long as we see that trending every week, we're not going to question it. If there's he comes in asking for $600 or $550 or $700, and he doesn't come in on his normal day, we're going to raise questions about that and talk to him, pull him aside, and see what's going on. So that's where those relations come into effect. And I also stated, this same approach Kennedy Financial has, is just having that kind of relationship with every client and every customer they have. So
it's
that's
critical.
Very, very important.
It's critical. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a few solutions if you've been a victim of identity theft and elder financial abuse here on Life Planning 101.
And we're back.
We're back. Identity theft, what you need to know. And we have a very special guest, Junior Pacheco, here with Texas Bank, which is, another family-like financial institution is what we like to call it, because they do get to know their customers and make that their priority. And if you've been listening to the show, or even if you haven't, be sure to tweet us at KFS Life Planning and let us know, have you been a victim of identity theft? We want to see how many people are listening to the show and where this tweet comes in. But, for those of you that have, here's some solutions that Mr. Pacheco has brought to the table of what they've seen be able to work. And this is for both identity theft and elder financial abuse, and what you can do on the backside if all else fails.
And some of those solutions are placing a fraud alert on your credit bureaus. So basically letting the credit bureaus know that my information has been hacked. You can place a freeze on your credit bureaus to not allow anyone to open a new account on that unless they call you first and identify that it's you that did that. Second is check your financial accounts. Rather than checking your statements, every month or every 2 months, check them weekly, or, basically just download an app on your phone.
So easy.
Yeah, and just check your accounts that way, and you can do that daily. The next thing is check your computer for viruses. And whenever I asked this question, whenever I gave that speech, I think a majority of those clients ran that daily or weekly. It's just like you had talked about those unsecured Wi-Fi spots.
Yeah.
Also, secure your proof of identity. Your passports, keep that in a safe place. Your Social Security card, your birth certificate, keep that in a safe place. Also, and this is, whenever I was researching this was one thing that I found that people normally don't do, and that's file a complaint or report that to the police department.
Oh.
Yeah. And
I thought of that.
To kind of touch on that, really, really fast, going back to financial elder abuse, only 1 in 9 seniors reports being abused.
Wow. It's probably due to the fact of who they're being abused by.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. They don't believe it, or even if they do, they just...
Yeah.
It's their kid, right?
Exactly.
My kid can do no wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. So if something happens, that kind of gets the process started there. Just file a report with the police, and they can monitor, is this happening to other people in the community, and what type of abuse it is. And that just really goes a long way, just filing a report. Also, keep a record of your actions. So if you take out a loan, or if you get a credit card, just keep record of that. Also, if you pay off a note, keep your paid off note in a safe place. And we talked about this earlier. Order credit reports and review them constantly. Something we didn't say, and that I personally do, is I have a credit card that I'm able to check my FICO score.
I was going to ask you about that, if that was a good route to go, because there are a lot of credit cards now. That's one of kind of their selling gimmicks. Is they'll you can monitor your credit score through their FICO.
Yeah, that's I can only see the score on that on my personal one. I can't go in there and look at the full detailed report. Okay. But also too, I know that if there's an account open, or a debt being placed using my Social Security number, my credit score is going to drop 30 or 40 points. So I'll know when something's going on.
Yeah.
And lastly, if you're a solution, don't ignore it. If you don't do anything to stop this or report it, one hacker has your information.
That's right.
Who's to say they're not going to share that with 2 or 3 other people and continue to use that? So.
Yeah, or keep coming back and hitting you over and over.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was out to dinner last weekend with a gentleman, and he actually had a guy came up at the table. He had handed his credit card, and he came back and he said, "May I see your ID?" And I was like, "What the heck?" Of course, I'm in New Orleans, so I figured, well, so maybe something's going on here different. But he said, "No, this is great." And he turned over his credit card, and he had written on the back of his credit card, "Ask for ID."
Oh.
And I thought, how brilliant is that?
That is genius.
Because that's really good.
That's genius.
To be honest with you, I haven't seen that. And there for a while, and I'll say a while, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there were retail shops or restaurants that were training their employees to ask for their ID, and that's not a common practice anymore.
No. Yeah. And of course, most of your abuse is actually going to happen electronically, but it is a stop guard. So, Junior, thank you so much for being on the show.
Welcome.
Again, we just appreciate the way you guys do business with your customers, and you take care of them. The clients we have are like family to us, and it's so important that that they have that same relationship with their banks. And I think that goes overlooked and unnoticed because of these big banks and the competitiveness that they can throw out there. But at the end of the day, there's so much that goes missing with that. So we want to thank Texas Bank for being on the show with us this morning.
No, thank you for allowing me to come over here and speak on that.
Absolutely. And appreciate all that you do for the clients you work with of Kennedy Financial Services as well. So with that being said, hope everybody has a great week. And we're here to help people live life on purpose. So if you have any questions about anything we do in any week, please give us a call. Email us, lifeplanning@kennedy-financial.com. My name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services. God bless.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services Incorporated is an independent of Calton & Associates Incorporated and Smart Money Group, LLC.